And welcome in to the Skol Purple Podcast Fan Express line here in Week 18 as the Minnesota Vikings have just defeated the Chicago Bears by a final score of 29-13. I'm sure we'll be getting some of our normal crew in here momentarily, but the Vikings pull off the victory again, 29-13 in Week 18. And the Vikings played their starters in the first half and then, took them out for the most part in the second half. As they mentioned on the broadcast today, you can't take everybody out because then you don't have enough players on the field. And especially with the Vikings injury situation, you saw some of those offensive linemen especially stay in at for quite a bit of that game. You saw, I think, Oli Udo stay in pretty much the whole game. Chris Reed. I don't know if Ed Ingram did, but I did see Vidarian Lowe get in on the left tackle spot, which was a good idea to take Christian Darrisaw out after that first half. But we'll get the rest of the crew in here shortly. Want to thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet to the podcast, make sure to do so. We would love to have you be a part of the content that we produce and bring you here on YouTube. And also would love it if you liked this video and sent us a comment. Ring the bell for all the latest updates, and you can get updated on when we go live on the show as well. So you can always do that so that you get it right away and don't wait until the show gets underway here. So, or don't wait until it's been after. So that is going to get us into some talking points here about the Vikings game. One of the things, I'm going to kind of go in towards the bad stuff at first because the Vikings did not play a perfect first half. They played well in that first half, but a couple of things that really was frustrating as I watched the game were, number one, the delay of game penalty on the first drive. Not the first drive. It was the delay of game penalty that was the Vikings were in field goal range, and I can't remember when it was. Was that their second to last drive before the end of the first half? I think that's when it was, when they ended up having to kick a field goal because there was a delay game penalty that pushed him back 5 yards, and that just led to the destruction of the third down play. They threw a ball short, was short of the first down. Greg Joseph came out. He did make the kick, even though he missed an extra point in this game. That's another debate I'm sure we'll probably talk about at some point. But yeah, and then, of course, you saw the debacle at the end of the first half with the Vikings totally biffing on the field goal at the end. Kirk Cousins, what are you doing? Why are you completing a pass short of the goal line? Like, if you are a quarterback in the NFL, you have to know that you had no timeouts and you had a certain amount of time, and you knew that there was no point in completing that pass if it wasn't going to be a touchdown. I don't know if he has so much faith in his receivers to break 10 tackles on their way to the end zone, but good grief, that would have taken probably 3 or 4 broken tackles for that to be a touchdown. Like, it was going to take a miracle. So that was a bad play by Cousins, but also some bad play calling, I thought, in that sequence by O'Connell. I would have thrown the ball on that second down when they ran it. I didn't like that play call. And then you could have saved your timeout. But obviously it doesn't matter right now, but those types of things could come to matter in the postseason. So it'll be interesting to see what the scoop is on that. So Looking forward to talking about the postseason matchup this coming week with hopefully Dash. We had him on. I'm guessing it's going to be the Giants because unless the Cardinals pull off an extreme upset, let's just call it that, it would be an extreme upset against the San Francisco 49ers today. So it is going to be interesting to see what the deal ends up being, but it's probably going to be the third seed. So I talked about two of the things that I didn't like from the Vikings today. What I did like is seeing some of the play from the young players in the game from Minnesota. The best performance I thought of the day offensively for the Vikings was KJ Osborne. I thought he was outstanding today. And, it's been a lot of us maybe complaining about where KJ Osborne has been for the majority of the season, and he showed up today. 5 catches, 117 on the day. Justin Jefferson was pretty well held in check, but again, they didn't keep him out there for the second half like all the starters. But another guy I really liked today, Jalen Nailor. 4 catches for 62 yards on the day. So really impressive performance from Jalen Nailor as well. And yeah, it was a good day for both of those receivers. CJ Ham, the Ham Show, back in town. I saw one of my college friends had some CJ Ham socks that he was given for Christmas, and they arrived for the game today, and obviously it showed well. Um, and Alexander Madison getting a good look today with a couple of touchdowns, 11 on 10 carries for 54 yards. So really good performance from Alexander Madison with a couple of scores as well, getting a good performance as he heads into free agency coming up this offseason. Dalvin Cook, wasn't a fan of Dalvin today. 11 carries, 37 yards. Obviously didn't get a chance to play in that second half, but he fumbled the ball. He had both hands on the ball and still somehow lost that ball. Harrison Hand, former Viking, of course, had to be the one to do it because why not? But it's just like, man, you can't have those types of mistakes in the postseason. Obviously, you can against the Bears because the Bears are, bad. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the Vikings can adjust this going forward, some of those things. But overall, a pretty good performance. Kirk Cousins, other than that blunder, I would say, on that third down when he couldn't get the play, or when he checked it down and then the Vikings couldn't kick that field goal at the end. Don't throw that ball, man. Don't throw that ball there. If you're going to throw it, you throw it to the end zone or you throw it away. Those are the only two options on that play. Don't take a sack. Don't throw it short of the goal line. And he did one of those things, and it cost the Vikings 3 points. And like I said already, play calling on that set of downs was atrocious. But other than that, Kirk was very good today. 17 of 20 for 225, 1 touchdown, including the 66-yarder. Well, that was the only touchdown for Kirk. Well, actually, it ended up not being a touchdown. It was a touchdown to Thielen. Osborne was knocked out short of the goal line. And then Thielen got a touchdown, and I think that was Thielen's. He had 2 receptions today. So, again, Thielen pretty much non-existent other than that touchdown reception. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. TJ Hawkinson only had 1 catch. It was a really nice catch and run for a first down. Greg Joseph, 3 for 3 on field goals today. And then 2 extra points out of 3 attempts. Did have a 50-yard field goal mixed in there, but then Ryan Wright did have 1 punt at the end of the game. That was the only punt of the day by the Vikings. They did have 2 turnovers, so I think that Nick Mullins one that Nick Mullins turnover could have very easily gone possibly as a punt if the Vikings didn't turn that ball over right there. So looks like we got Tony in here. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Staggy. Welcome in.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. We're pretty happy with the performance from the Vikings today. I know I'm always a little skeptical just because we know how the Vikings have performed in past weeks, so it's hard to say, okay, now we're talking. Now the Vikings are where we want them to be. Well, they just played one of the worst teams in the NFL and still, like, 29 to 13 is not necessarily just killing them. You know what I mean? So it's, the Bears, they didn't have a chance really in this game. You never felt like, okay, all right, the Bears have a chance here. Cause when Nathan Peterman's your quarterback, good luck. And Tim Boyle, but,
Yeah.
there's some things, of course, that I'm a little like, okay, let's fix these things because it's been and the one thing I will say before I give it off to you is I mentioned the delay of game thing before a third down deep in the red zone that the Vikings had, and then it ended up being third and longer, and then the Vikings ended up taking a field goal instead. How much longer are we going to have this problem? Like that to me it's been something that the Vikings have had all year and they have not figured it out. Kevin O'Connell, you're in your 18th game. Get the play in. Stop talking to Kirk. you know, I,
Right. Yeah.
I don't think it's all on Kirk there. I think part of it is on KOC. Like, okay, I know you want to give him as much information as you can here, but at some point you have to say, okay, I need to be quiet or we're not going to get this playoff. So there or Kirk just needs to hurry up a little bit too. I'm not totally saying he's not to blame on those situations, but man, when you get into the playoffs and you have that kind of thing on the road at San Francisco, on the road at Philly, whatever, assuming we get to that point, those are penalties that you're possibly not going to be able to overcome because of that offensive line being the way it is and being in third and longer situations. But anyways, I'll stop my rambling. Let you talk about that and talk about your overall thoughts on the defeat of the Bears, the bear down against Chicago.
Yeah, I thought it was just like, if I'm gonna call it for what it is, it was kind of a boring game overall. I mean, it was obviously fun from the standpoint that we won. Certainly fun from the standpoint that it was, nice to see some guys like Madison, Osborne, have some games. We got to see a Thielen touchdown, which we haven't gotten to see many times this year as I think most of us would have liked. Um, but overall, outside of those aspects, which most of the fireworks came for those in the first half, it just was kind of a boring game. It really felt like the Vikings were never really out of control this game, which was weird.
Right.
That was a little bit of an odd feeling.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect was it felt like the Bears just kind of, I don't want to say they wanted to lose. I don't know if there's a team that wants to really lose. Certainly these guys want to earn contracts and especially the guys that are coming off the bench, but it just felt like the general consensus very early on that the Vikings were going to be winning this game, and it never really felt like that was in doubt, in my opinion.
Yep. I agree. But yeah, what is your thoughts on these delay of games all the time? I know other teams have them. I'm not oblivious to other teams having these struggles either. But I think there's got to be something said to Kirk or maybe Kevin. They need to come together and find out why this keeps happening, because it doesn't happen maybe every game, but it seems like it's happened quite frequently where the play clock is down to 0 or 1 when they're hiking the ball. And it's like, Why is that the case all the time? We need to figure this out before it costs us in a playoff game here.
Yeah, you did ask that question, and I just decided not to answer it. No, I
I want an
think that
answer. Dang it!
I just I think you're right on that one. It's my opinion is it's a combination of O'Connell being O'Connell. I think he wants to have the perfect play in. He wants to wait as long as he can to see what kind of personnel the defense is putting out on the field, which I'm sure plays a factor. And then you add the element of him being a first year coach. I just think you add all of that together, and that's probably where we're seeing some of the delay games come from. I don't think I necessarily put that it on Kirk too much because I don't necessarily see it, and maybe it's just because I am the untrained eye and I'm missing it, but it doesn't feel like he is wasting a lot of time at the line per se. It just seems like they're taking forever to line up, which leads me to believe it's more on the play call side than it is on Kirk and the offense actually trying to get to the line and run a play. So I would agree with you. I think it's more on Kevin O'Connell, but I do think the reason why we're seeing it is because he likes to be very creative. I think he thinks he can outsmart the defense with his play call. So he waits a while to see again, what kind of personnel he's going to be up against. And then he's a young coach. So I'm sure he's not quite as quick with it as I'm sure he would like.
Yeah, and it's it's kind of like I said, a situation where they need to get it fixed. And by the way, the Chicago Bears now have the number one overall pick in the draft as the Houston Texans. I don't know if you saw this, Tony, on a 4th and 20 from like the 38. I don't know what yard line it was. I could look here, I guess, but the Texans went for a Hail Mary pretty much, and let's see, it was a 28-yard touchdown pass on a 4th and 20. And man, the Colts just have real problems on defense up in second halves this year, apparently.
Oh my goodness.
um, and then they went for two and got it, and they won the game by one. And the Bears now have the number one overall pick. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Well, good for the
And
Bears.
thank the Lord, by the way, Tony, that we don't have to see the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs because the Miami Dolphins won, and the Buffalo Bills narrowly. Well, it wasn't as narrow as I thought. They beat the Patriots. So I am glad. I was so concerned there for a moment. Like, oh no, are we going to get a Pittsburgh Steeler postseason here? Like, nobody wants to see that. Like, did anybody want to see that? Like, other than Steeler fans and
Other than
maybe a
Steeler fans, yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like what but
Yeah, not exactly the greatest product out on the field. I suppose it would have been good for
the
Tomlin. I am a
right.
Tomlin fan, but yeah, certainly the product is not exactly something that I want to consume on a Saturday or a Sunday. The other one, of course, we've got Tampa Bay locking up the NFC South.
Yeah.
Um, they are going to lock it up with the 7-9 record,
Yep.
or eight
And
and eight and
and a
nine
loss
record.
to
Sorry, not
Atlanta.
7-9, 8-9 record. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember this, Carson, but there was a season a ways back, NFC West. Seattle wins that division back when we were playing 16 games. So they locked up that division at 7-9, won that
Yep.
division. And then I think was it New Orleans? New Orleans had to
Yep.
go and play in Seattle because of course Seattle was a division winner, so they got home field
I
for
want to
that game.
say, was it the year after New Orleans won the Super Bowl?
So maybe 2012.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah, so it'd be 2011, I believe. I
Or
want to
no,
say.
the way year they won the Super Bowl, so it would
Or-
have been 2010 then.
Yeah, it would have been 2010, 2011 postseason. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
That makes
that's
sense.
when I think that's when that happened because then that's when the beast mode coming out party was, right?
That's right. Yeah, and they won. They
Yeah.
won that playoff game.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then that started the Legion of Boom and
Well, you're
Pete
playing
Carroll's
if
still
you're winning
alive.
your division, if you win your division with a losing record, you get into the playoffs. I mean, at that point, you're playing with house money. You just, you throw it out all out there on the table. If you win a playoff game, great. If not, you made it in. You know.
Right. That's exactly right. So I am hoping that Seattle loses, by the way, because I want to see a win and in for either team tonight on Sunday Night Football, and preferably the Lions. But that's another story. But anyways, I guess maybe we should talk a little bit more Vikings before we dive in to the rest of the league here. But I know there's not really a whole lot to discuss either necessarily. The Vikings still could get the number 2 seed if a miracle happens in San Francisco and Arizona. JJ Watt, maybe he'll have a coming out party for this game. Maybe he'll have 4 sacks or something of Brock Purdy today
You never know.
just to put an exclamation point on his career. But
Very
it
unlikely.
is, yeah, I agree. But overall, other than one throw in the game, I thought Nick Mullins played really well in that second half. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Nick Mullins, the future quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings after next year when Kirk Cousins is gone. But I do think if the Vikings got into a spot where Kirk Cousins gets hurt in the postseason or next season potentially, I would say I'm much more comfortable with Nick Mullins stepping in there than any of the previous options of the last many years of Vikings backups.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well,
not
I'd
just
take
talking
Nick
about Sean
Mullins.
Mannion. I'm talking
No.
about all the other guys before that even. So,
Well, I guess I'll say this. I think if you were to ask me, would I take Nick Mullins over Sean Mannion? 100% yes. Would I take Nick Mullins over Case Keenum? I don't know.
yeah,
I don't
that's a good
know.
point. It's a good point.
But
Where
that
would
might
you
be the only one.
say where
That
would
might
you
be the only.
say Nick Mullins is among backup quarterbacks? Would you put him in the top 10?
I'd say he's up there. Yeah. Cuz he started some games and he's won some games as
Yeah.
a starter. I would say he's probably from my vantage point, yeah, I'd say he's in the top 10 of backups. I don't know if he's in the top 3, but I think he's cracking top 10 pretty safely in my opinion.
Yeah.
Cuz I think once you start getting into like the upper echelon of backups, you might be talking about guys where we think maybe the starter is also, you know, might
Right.
not be quite as good as the backup,
Yeah.
or we're talking about people that are actually potentially proteges to be full-time starters. So but I think Mullins is, yeah, just as a backup is a pretty serviceable backup. I also want to give a little game break, by the way. We were just talking about how unlikely it is, which I will still say that Arizona beats San Francisco. David Dow hits AJ Green, of all people, for a 65-yard touchdown. They're
That's
currently
a
up 6
combo.
to 0.
That's a combo
There you
right
go.
there. So the question now becomes, Tony, let's is any other thoughts before we move on? I guess we could give our game balls. But
Oh,
any
sure. Yeah,
any
yeah. No,
any
I
other
I don't I
thoughts?
don't have any major thoughts on. I just think overall I was happy with, I was happy with the offensive line just getting out there and not looking like a complete S show. I mean,
Right.
obviously we're going up against a team that, as I mentioned, it kind of felt like they were a bit checked out. But
Oh, for
look, these
sure.
guys still want to perform, and especially you're talking about guys that are not starters. They want to get out there and show why they should be in the league, why they should be on a roster next year. So they're going to try. They're certainly not just going to give up. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought that overall it was nice to see the line just get a week. I'm not saying they looked phenomenal, but just get a week where they could be together, especially with the center position, with Cleveland out there filling in for O'Neal. Wasn't it Cleveland or was it Udo that filled in for O'Neal?
It was Udo.
Oh, it was Udo that filled in.
Oh,
So,
for Cleveland?
or yeah, who filled in for O'Neal today?
It was Udo.
It was Udo. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think Miles Hinton was in there for a little bit. I think it's Miles Hinton.
Okay.
I don't think it, but and
Yeah,
then saw him in there. I saw Vidarian Lowe at left tackle. When Christian Darrisaw came out of the game in the second half.
exited the game. Yeah,
Yep, yep, for rest reasons. Um, but
but yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was nice to see them get a day just to work together. I think that will bode well for a very likely matchup. I think with the Giants is who will probably be looking at playing. In my opinion, obviously
yeah,
things can change. We'll see how everything shakes out today. The nice thing is we are going to know by the end of today who we are playing because there is no Monday night football game. This is a reminder to everybody in the last week. So all of the games will be done after tonight. Obviously, with the big Green Bay Lions. Now, actually, Carson, I did not know this. For whatever reason, and I get that part of it is the way things are spun, and the media, especially the sports media, we love a good story. For whatever reason, spent most of this week thinking that the Lions Packer game was winning in,
yeah.
right? It's not really winning in for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
So Packers, they are winning in. So regardless of what anything happens if the Packers win, they are in. Detroit, however, if Detroit wins tonight, it has to be in combination with a Seattle loss for Detroit to be in.
3
So
nothing Los Angeles, by the way.
yeah, so and I'm gonna be
Go
honest, I
Rams.
don't have a lot of faith in the Rams. So I'm a
I have
little
more
worried.
faith, actually. I have more faith in the Rams than you
Okay.
because I think Baker Mayfield's been showing out the last few weeks against Green Bay. He didn't, of course, because
Why
just
would he?
wanted. Why would he? Yeah. Why would anybody show up against Green Bay when they're going to run the table and get in? But um, um, maybe he'll show up today. Good first drive, getting 3 points.
Yeah.
But he only was one of two on that drive, apparently. I don't know if
Well,
they
I
got
certainly
a
hope. I
what.
hope that they win. And look,
And
I'm
yeah,
sorry, Seattle fans. Anybody listening that's
I'm not.
a Seahawks fan. It is what it is. I'm not trying to actively root against the Seahawks. I don't really have anything against the Seahawks at all. It's
Nobody wants
just
Geno Smith in the playoffs.
I
No
just
offense,
think it's a
other than
better
Geno Smith.
obviously, it's a better matchup, it's a better storyline if it truly is winning in for both Detroit and Green Bay, and I think that also incentivizes, clearly, Detroit to really push and hopefully, end the Packers season this evening, because if Seattle wins, I mean, look, Detroit certainly can play spoiler, but then that's all they're playing for, and, I mean, that's different than playing for a playoff spot, let's be honest. So, I'm hoping for a Seattle loss. Just if anyone was in the same boat that I am in, if anybody's in the same boat I'm in, I spent all week thinking it was winning in for both Detroit and Green Bay. It is not
No.
unless Seattle loses.
And again, I say go Rams and go Lions. Sorry, Caden. Go Lions. I don't know if you're going to be there tonight. I would imagine you got to be because the NFL has rigged the Packers to get into the playoffs, as you should well know. But
Yeah,
because
well,
the NFL wants, I've said it, and I will go to my grave saying the NFL wants Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers in these playoffs.
yeah, well, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with that.
He's
Another
going to the
game
game.
break,
He's going to the game.
game
Man,
break. 49ers have scored. Um, Arizona and all of their greatness missed their extra point, so currently the Niners are ahead 7-6.
Final score.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, could you imagine? Could you imagine
Well,
that game ending 7-6?
look, I'm riding high because so I do a little bit of betting every week, and I bet with my dad. It's just friendly betting, it's all for, a dinner and some drinks at the end of the year. And we're obviously in the final week. We only bet the Vikings and Packer games every week. And he took the first pick and he took the over at 42.5. I took the Vikings at -6.5. And I ran the table, obviously, because our over and under ended up right at 42 because I got the under then. And
Yeah.
certainly the Vikings covered. So I got a nice steak
I
dinner and a cocktail coming my way.
I don't know if you were watching SVP last night after the Jaguars Titans game, but I caught his picks for today for betting or whatever. He said he's taken Nathan Peterman and the Bears. There was another person or two that was doing the same thing. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, literally, the Vikings would have had to play like they did against Green Bay, and the Bears would have had to play like the 85 Bears, and then maybe it would have been close.
Well, I don't know if they knew this, but Nathan Peterman is not Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So
I
there's that.
I just could not believe that he would want to take the Bears. Like, why would you dare to put money on that? Like, oof, that is
Well, I mean, look, we're talking about it, so obviously, right?
yeah.
But no, yeah, not great take. I was pretty confident in taking the Vikings -6.5 today, and I'm glad they didn't disappoint.
Well, I tell you what, Caden, if the Vikings made this, I mean, it was still closer than I would have liked it to be, but if the Vikings did make it close, I wouldn't have been surprised. But
Yeah. Shout out to Caden, by the way. He has a great TikTok channel, and his latest video, probably not the latest, but one of his latest videos about his experience at the Packer Viking game was just golden. So shout out to Caden. Go check out his stuff.
yeah, maybe not his immediate reaction after the Vikings
Oh
lost to
yeah,
the
and he's a
Packers, but
big Viking fan. I'm kidding. He's a
I
big Packer.
did, I did, I did catch that, Caden, and I was more surprised that it was as bad of a loss as it was, but I was not surprised that the Packers won because like I told you in our episode, like I said, Vikings would lose that game, and sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
But
I don't
anyways,
want to talk about it anymore.
let's not bring ourselves further down here. Let's go back to game balls here, Kevin. Tony, we haven't had Kevin on the show in a long time, by
Yeah,
the way.
that's true.
But Tony, I'm gonna go ahead and give my game ball to somebody that had a pretty good game, but maybe is under the radar. I'm gonna say Jalen Naylor, 4 catches, 62
Mm.
yards, and I think Jalen Naylor showed not only today but against Green Bay, garbage time. Obviously, today was pretty much garbage time as well. But I kind of like what I'm seeing out of this rookie that the Vikings snagged in the 7th round. Was it? Um, I think it was the later rounds, 5th round maybe. Maybe it was 5th round,
Yeah,
but
later rounds. Later rounds. Yeah.
but I'm gonna give Jalen Naylor a game ball on those 4 catches for 62 yards.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I am I was a nailer. I was a fan of the pick, so I was a Naylor fan when we took him in last year's draft. I think I saw some potential there when I did a little bit of studying on him at Michigan State. So yeah, I'm excited that he got out there, got some play time, and I'll be excited obviously to see him next year. I highly doubt we're going to see him much in the playoffs, obviously, with us really running the ones out there. Hopefully, in a way, we don't see him because that would probably be due to some sort of injury bug that gets
Or
the team.
maybe, or maybe Tony, the
Secret
Vikings are
weapon.
up by 30 plus in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, there was that. Yeah. So actually, if we
Not
look
gonna
at it from
happen.
that perspective, let's hope we see a lot of Jalen Naylor.
That's right.
because we're up by so many. We don't want to get JJ hurt. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's right.
well, you know what's funny, and I'll get into my game ball here, but Carson, you mentioned Naylor, and I thought to myself just for a brief moment, I was thinking, man, I wonder why we haven't seen him in a while, and I bet that indie game where Rager had those 2 pretty critical errors, that led to Kirk interceptions,
Yeah.
I think we've seen Naylor usurp, Rager in the wide receiver pecking order. You know, obviously, it's a little further down on the list in the depth chart, but I would hedge to bet we've seen Rager relinquish some of his spots because,
Could
I think
be.
in times past, maybe those were some Rager snaps. You never
Could
know.
very well be. Could
You
very
never
well
know.
be. Who's your game ball going to here, sir?
I'm gonna take a little bit of the low hanging fruit, but I'm gonna go Osborne. I mean, I know that he's had some big games, especially in the last month, but overall, just happy to see him continue to grow. This is what we wanted to see this year, was him to take another jump. And, if we were to have our other kind of regular on here, David, I think he'd agree that, um, you know, this is just something that we were looking to expect this year, and really going into next year, really looking for Osborne to take an even bigger step and maybe really becoming the number 2 in our wide receiver depth chart. So, love to
Yeah.
see him have another good game. I think he continues to look the part of a very solid number 3, and hopefully that continues, so he can continue to look towards that number 2 spot.
Yeah, and I like that pick, and I really think David hit the nail on the head. I don't know if he's still watching, but he hit the nail on the head early in the season when he was starting to say, "I think KJ Osborne so usurped Adam Thielen as the number 2," and even you and I were kind of like, I don't know," but here he is, and now we're kind of all like, "Yep, you were right, David." You were right because Adam Thielen, man, he had 2 catches for 8 yards and a touchdown today. Obviously the touchdown, red zone threat, we'll give him that yet. But other than that, Adam Thielen, man, he is just not what he used to be. And God love him. We loved him when he was good, and we still love him. Minnesota boy, of course. Went to school at Minnesota at Minnesota State Mankato, by the way. I don't know if you
Yeah.
knew that, but that's never been talked about on any TV broadcast.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who knew?
but he's probably a Ring of Honor guy, but he just doesn't have it anymore. In
Yeah.
terms of being a number 2, probably more of a number 3, number 4 type of guy at this point.
Yeah, just, I think part of it is too, he's just losing a step, having a
Yeah.
hard time getting separation. I think the hands are still there. I
Oh, for
just think
sure.
his the craftiness is, it just might not be enough anymore with again kind of losing a step. And um You know, it's too bad, but like you said, Ring of Honor guy, he'll be a Viking for life, is certainly with our fan base. Unless he goes to like the Packers, then we might have to, he
Yep.
might have to turn in his Vikings card. But
That's
he's a
right.
guy. Even if he doesn't finish with the Vikings, he'll always be a Viking. He's one of those type of players in my opinion.
Yep.
Jalen Naylor, by the way, round 6,
Oh, round 6. Okay.
round
There you
6.
go. There you go. Well, before we wrap this up, I don't think there's too much more to talk about here, Tony, but um, let's talk about this. I know, this is probably going to be relevant by the time this video, by the time people are watching this later on, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on what you would like to see. By the way, how about the Washington Sam Howell led Commanders up 7-0, and they have a 1st and 10 at the Dallas 15 right now. And Dallas has something to play for, by the way.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
how about that? But the San Francisco 49ers are just about to punt, up by 1 on the Arizona Cardinals. And the Rams and Seahawks are tied at 3 currently. So Not that that has any bearing on the Vikings, except for who they could play if they get the number 2 seed. But as much as I would love Tony to have 2 home playoff games, I am of the mindset that I don't want to play whoever ends up in that number 7 seed in the first round. I would
Yeah.
rather play the New York Giants. I'm not saying the Vikings can't lose to the Giants, because I could definitely see that happening. But I would much rather take my chances with the Giants over the Packers or the Lions, for that matter. Especially the Lions. I think the Lions are much more of a matchup nightmare. I know Caden wants us to play again because he probably wants to see the. Well, we know what he wants to see, but I would say I'd rather see the Packers though than the Lions. I wouldn't want to see either one of them, but if I had to choose, because I think the Lions match up better overall against the Vikings. But I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
I would agree with that.
neither one would be good. But
I'm with you,
but the
Carson. I would
Vikings,
say
assuming the Vikings would get that 2 seed, they would get, if they won that game, they would get another game at home for sure. But if somehow Green Bay or Detroit or Seattle potentially gets into the postseason and defeats the 49ers, Brock Purdy has a back to earth type of game, then all of a sudden the Vikings are hosting a round 2 playoff game. And so, yeah, then it doesn't even matter at that point. But obviously, you don't necessarily want to go to Philadelphia. But primetime Kirk, yes, we know. As long as it's not 325 CBS, Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, then apparently we're a lot better shape when Jim Nantz and Tony Romo aren't calling our games. So,
yeah, I mean the Minneapolis Miracle happened with Joe Buck, so
that's right.
I think Buck might be turning the corner. As long as we're not playing the Packers, Buck might be turning the corner. Because if we're playing the Packers, but Buck is gonna he's gonna melt into Lambeau Field and become one with the franchise. So
And Rodgers, probably. As much as I love Joe Buck, I am a Joe Buck stan, by the way, but he does tend to love his Aaron Rodgers, which,
he's phenomenal at his job. He's
yeah.
very good at his
Thank you.
job.
I'm taking that thank you on behalf of Joe Buck, by the way. But yeah, I'm on the 3 seed at this point. If the Vikings could have got the 1 seed, that would have been the most ideal, in my opinion. Obviously, but
Obviously.
yeah, I think I'm with you. The number 3 seed is where I would like to see this team. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I'm with you. I would rather play the Giants than either the Packers or the Lions. And it also plays into the idea that the Lions and the Packers know our ball club very well. They both played us twice this year. Um, they're just tougher matchups. Now, at the end of the day, would it be all the more sweet if we could beat the Packers? Of course. I mean, 100%, right? But would it be all the more devastating if we lost to the Packers again for the second time? Also, yes. And I don't really feel like having to be angry because of a sports team for another time. Because look, if we lose to the Niners, if we lose to the Eagles, um, I'm not. I mean, will I be disappointed? Of course, 100%. It's the Vikings. I want them to win every game.
That's
But
more
I'm gonna
acceptable.
understand. But there's
Right.
part of me where I just can't. Because I know I'm gonna have to face someone at some point that's gonna be a Packer fan, and then they're gonna rub my nose in it, and I just don't want to. I just don't want to deal with it. So, yeah, I would rather have us lose to basically any other team, and it makes me scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I wasn't sure about this idea, but maybe later on tonight, maybe you and I will do a live, or maybe I'll just do a quick live. Maybe I'll just do a quick video on my own, just basically briefly touching on, okay, here's what's happening. The Vikings are playing this team, and actually that's going to be, well, no, actually, probably, well, technically, if they get the 2 seed, we won't know until after the Green Bay Detroit game, so it could be later, but I am planning possibly to do a video later talking about that matchup, but obviously we'll try and get whoever it is we're talking to for whatever game it ends up being. I'm guessing it's going to be Dash probably again for the Giants game, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But any final statements from you, Tony? I'm going to go ahead and let you take the floor, and I will give mine after I hear what you have to say.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, for Daddy Doyle, I just wanted to show my beautiful face here. I
That's
figured,
right. You got to keep him around. He needs to
yeah,
see the face.
yeah. Well, this is the money maker right here. So
That's right.
now my
I
pop
work in
filter that
radio, so
goes,
they tell me that the
yeah,
face is not so much the moneymaker.
exactly. I just put this bag right on over my head. I'd be even better.
Oh
Yeah,
boy.
my pop filter that goes on my mic, I don't know where it is, so I tend to use the pop that kind of covers the front of it, but hopefully this isn't too bad. Final statements, I'm gonna wrap up with more of the season. And certainly I know whenever we come to that point where the Vikings are not going to be playing anymore this year, then we'll make those. But just from a regular season standpoint, super excited for where we are. 13-4. I certainly did not predict 13-4. I know we got a lot of one score wins, blah blah blah. Did we have some balls bounce our way? Of course we did. Every team that wins a lot of games does, for the most part. So I'm not going to feel bad about it. Super excited about the season. Super excited about the playoffs. The only thing that you need is a chance. So we're in the playoffs. Skol Vikes. Here we go.
There you go. There you go. Got to get that in there at least once. Didn't even roll the our intro today, but oh well. I'm really good at this, by the way. But yeah, I agree with you in the sense that this is much more entertaining than 8-8 or 8-9. I will take this 100 times more than that. But I I just don't want to settle. I'm sick of settling. We've been settling as Minnesota sports fans and Minnesota Vikings fans, more in particular, for way too long, Tony and everybody. We need to stop settling. Let's go win this dang thing. I'm sick of it. Let's get the monkey off our back. Bring home that Lombardi trophy for once. I think there might be a Packer curse on it just because it's the Lombardi trophy that we just can't get it. But we'll have to wait and see if we could finally pull it out. I have my doubts, but the hope is for your sake, my sake, the sanity sake of all of us, that the Vikings finally get it done. If not this year, then some point, but hopefully this year, so we can have a lot of more fun talking about the future of this team. And I think it is interesting to talk about the idea what if the Vikings would go win the Super Bowl, is it easier then for the Vikings to say, okay, now we can rebuild now that we've won the championship? Or would they say, run it back and go get another one? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
another storyline, Carson. Not to but right before we go here, but you mentioned about kind of winning the Super
Glenn
Bowl,
Grant
and
trophy
then where do
someday.
we go from there? Here's an interesting one we didn't touch on today, but McVay, it sounds like, maybe mulling over his future with the Rams. He may look to retire. And it's just interesting that we've seen now in the last, 5 years, Doug Peterson wins a Super Bowl with the Eagles. A year after he's, out in Philadelphia, Sean McVay obviously wins the Super Bowl with the Rams, and here we are a year later, and it sounds like that. I don't necessarily think that it's LA that's driving that move, but it is interesting how that
No.
happens, and I think part of it is that you get so high
Mm.
with all the emotions, and it takes so much effort, and just everything that goes into winning a Super Bowl. And I think not being able to recreate that, like many before them have not, it almost feels like it's a bigger letdown, not realizing that, hey, most of the time, you're not winning the Super Bowl every single year, right? So, just thought that was kind of an interesting wrinkle, but I'm sure we will talk about that once we get a little closer to playoff time, and when that news, I'm sure, shakes out. There'll probably be a lot of newsworthy items that come out after the regular season officially ends after today.
Appreciate Too Evil to Hope with his Donatel being fired take. Appreciate you getting in here. Yes, hopefully this is the last season and only season of Ed Donatel. However, I don't believe Ed Donatel is the only one to blame for this defense being the way it is. It's definitely some regression in the players that we've seen this season. But anyways, I think that is going to do it. Like I said, maybe we will come back on here later on today with a video. Maybe we'll go live, just talking about. I think if the Vikings somehow get the 2 seed, we'll definitely come back on here and we'll definitely talk about that. But I think if it's the Giants, maybe we'll just save that for a preview. But looking forward to whatever happens. It is going to be a rough playoffs and off season. Hopefully one of the two is going to be good. I'm hoping. I guess it depends on what your definition of a rough off season is. Obviously, it doesn't take too much to figure out what a rough postseason would look like. But, anyways, that is going to do it for the show. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment in the comment section your thoughts on the Vikings win, postseason look forward to, and all that stuff as well. If you have any questions about the offseason, what they should do, all that stuff, make sure to throw that in the comments as well. Tony, appreciate you joining me. Appreciate all of you for being here. Too Evil to Hope, appreciate you hopping in there as well. And as always, Skol.
Let's go.